Throughout history, there have been periods of relative peace and times of heightened conflict. Pope Leo XIV recently caused a stir by publicly declining a handshake from Kate Middleton, but what happened next was anything but predictable. It shifted the entire dynamic. How does the next pope's behavior at this moment show who he is? Come with us as we reveal the shocking truth about the incident that is causing a stir: the split between the Pope and the British royal family. Disputes, compromises, and strategic dialogue have all contributed to the long and winding history of the relationship between the British Crown and the Vatican. At first glance, a royal handshake could seem simple and ordinary. But there's a complicated tale of belief disputes, slow progress, and the lasting impact of old traditions underlying this seemingly simple gesture. When Pope Leo XIV declined Kate Middleton's handshake during their meeting, some observers may have been astonished or confused. But when the past was studied, the possible importance of that particular event became clear. During the reign of King Henry VIII in the 16th century, tensions between England and the Pope started to rise. When Pope John XXIII refused to grant Henry's request to divorce Catherine of Aragon, the once loyal Catholic population of England began to turn against the Pope. In response, Henry formed the Church of England and separated himself from the Catholic Church. He himself served as its leader. Because of this, a long-lasting religious schism and the Anglican Church were born. English religion was deeply divided for a long time after the break from the Roman Catholic Church, which had little to do with marriage. Kings that succeeded Henry VIII swung between Catholicism and Protestantism, forcing their views on the populace and retaliating against dissenters. Throughout England's religious history, brutal conflicts, beheadings, and forced migrations were prevalent. For a long time, Catholics were perceived as foreigners, and the Pope, who had once been revered by English kings, as an unofficial figurehead without power in their nation. For quite some time, English kings and queens shied away from visiting the Vatican. Visiting formally was not something they did very often. England remained autonomous from Rome despite the pervasive impact of Catholicism across Europe. Prior to quite recently, the public would have viewed any relationship between the Pope and the British royal family with suspicion. During the 20th century, relations between the British monarchy and the Vatican began to improve. The first reigning British monarch to pay a papal visit in recent memory was Elizabeth II in 1980, when she made history by visiting the Vatican with Pope John Paul II. The gathering was significant because it marked an end to hostilities between the two groups. Queen Elizabeth II is the highest-ranking official of the Church of England. However, she continues to be a member of a sect that is not officially affiliated with Rome, despite their cordial relationship. Rare as they may be, royal trips to the Vatican always make headlines. These visits are usually quite well-planned and serene. Words, deeds, and motions all follow a predetermined pattern. Every action is carefully examined for its potential significance. Nothing is left to chance. The significance of even a brief handshake cannot be overstated. Although the schism between Catholics and Anglicans is less pronounced now than it was in the past, it is nevertheless present. God, who really resides inside each of us, with the hope of guiding individuals back to a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and the reality of God's presence in their lives. Despite some cooperation, there are major differences in the two churches' tenets, practices, and structures. While Anglicans consider their church to be autonomous, Catholics consider the Pope to be the leader of all Christians, and do not think there should be a governing body in Rome. These differences are difficult to overlook, particularly during crucial discussions. It is at this point when Pope Leo XIV and Kate Middleton met. It caught everyone off guard when he chose not to shake her hand. His decision may not have been an act of rejection or disdain, though, when we consider the past. There may have been a subtle nod to the past, trying to show that limits persist, even though people are trying to talk to each other. Can you tell me the truth about the papal meeting with the Princess of Wales? What made him say no to shaking her hand? Does this action suggest any underlying conflicts? A princess and the Pope have an intimate, unsaid moment. Just 5 days had passed since Pope Leo XIV made his first appearance on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. His election continued to shock the world. Many were taken aback by the fact that he was a pope with ties to Peru and was born in the United States. Wearing a plain black cassock instead of the usual vestments adorned with gems and gold, he opted for simplicity rather than extravagance. Unlike previous popes, Francis chose not to wear the papal ring. He didn't have an elaborate throne or a huge entourage. He stood alone. According to others who watched him, he dined at a plain wooden table and slept on an unadorned cot in a little room. He made it clear that thrones and crowns were not his thing, instead choosing a crown formed by sacrifice. As the gentle light streamed through the ancient walls and stained glass windows of the Sistine Chapel one morning, Pope Leo sat down to pray. Distant footfalls were the sole audible disturbance to the dense stillness. With grace and discretion, an official from the Vatican entered the chapel and informed the Pope that Princess Catherine of Wales had asked for an audience. The journey to Rome has already begun for her. In the absence of any diplomatic protocols or official invitation, merely a personal request. Upon waking up, the Pope rose to his feet and inquired as to if the Duchess of Cambridge desired to meet with him. Pope Leo told the receiving room to get ready when the aide arrived, but he also said the meeting wouldn't be conducted in the customary manner. When questioned about informing the media, he claimed it was pointless because news would spread worldwide in due time. Princess Catherine sat serenely in her private plane over the Mediterranean, discussing a statement with her staff. With her crew encircling her, they painstakingly penned each word, attending to every detail. She planned to convey a message of grace and reverence, one that sought to bridge the gap between the old and the new, between religion and contemporary self-expression. The combination of ivory and delicate pearls, as her stylist had advised, was designed to convey power subtly. Pope Leo was not a conventional man, and did not necessarily adhere to established norms, as one anxious aide had noted. Catherine had clarified that her intention was not to win him over, but rather to simply meet him. She hadn't been trying to impress anyone, but rather to comprehend. Within the Vatican walls, anticipation was palpable when her plane landed in Rome. Rumors circulated as people speculated about the significance of the surprise royal visit. Acquiring further information was a top priority for the journalists. As the sentries readied themselves at their stations, preparations were underway to capture the event on film. The customary gathering place for papal guests had been set up inside the Vatican, but the customary ornate decorations were absent. Neither luxurious velvet drapes nor ornately gilded chairs were present. Sitting silently in his cassock, Pope Leo wore only a red mozzetta. He had neither a staff nor any rings on his finger. His hands were lying on his lap as he sat serenely. The grand entrance swung open, and Princess Catherine entered. Because of her self-assured and authentic demeanor, she made an immediate impression on everyone in the room. As cameras captured the moment, the air grew silent and flashbulbs began to strobe. All conversation in the room came to a halt. She approached the Pope with a smile on her face and shook his hand as they greeted each other warmly. Noticing that Pope Leo remained motionless and did not extend his hand to shake hers, observers took note. With an air of self-assurance, he maintained eye contact with her. As she held her hand in the air, it was as if time had frozen. She seemed to accept it after a few moments, and she lowered her hand. A glimmer of uncertainty was visible in her eyes, even if her demeanor remained unchanged. Pope Leo said nothing, hugged no one, and didn't even apologize. He ignored her and made his way to a table where a pitcher, basin, and towel were set up. It was unclear what was going to transpire, but even without words, the meaning began to dawn on me. The mood of the room shifted at that moment. There was silence and no predetermined plan to follow. Nevertheless, a significant event had transpired. No formal remarks or demonstrations of power were necessary for this meeting. Something deeper and more nuanced was at work, but his reaction to Kate shocked everyone. First, let's examine his viewpoint more closely before we go into that, as well as the possible motivations for his behavior. To better understand the spiritual leader of the world's approximately 1.4 billion Catholics, we'd like to get to know Pope Leo XIV. Few could have foreseen the extraordinary ascent of Pope Leo XIV, who was once known as Robert Francis Provost. On September 14, 1955, he entered this world in Chicago, Illinois. Came from a family of staunch believers and was brought up in a strict Catholic environment. He felt compelled to devote his life to helping others when he was a child in America. His life's work was serving God and others, not amassing riches or celebrity. Curiously, he ended himself in the Vatican after a journey that began on Chicago streets. He joined the religious community known as the Order of St. Augustine, which places an emphasis on service to others, learning, and community building. He had a quiet and dedicated period as an Augustinian. His modesty was a powerful weapon in his belief in helping others. With this resolve, he traveled to Peru, the setting for a life-altering series of events. Robert Prevost spent a great deal of time assisting the poor in Peruvian communities. He didn't merely go to the area or observe. He actually became one of the locals, praying and working side by side with them. He gained the esteem of the local clergy and the impoverished alike through his extensive network of relationships with both groups. Bishop of Chiclayo, a diocese in northern Peru, was appointed to the position due to his considerable work in the region. He addressed it calmly and with determination, despite the tremendous responsibility. While serving as bishop, he proved he was capable of much more than simply officiating services. He was a patient leader who paid attention to followers, dealt with them equitably, and led with wisdom. Improving seminary education, encouraging vocations, and fortifying the Church's ties to the community were his top priorities. He was modest and forthright, even though he was in a position of power. His ability to connect with others on an individual level, rather than as an authority figure, earned him widespread acclaim. His remarkable performance began to garner him more attention in Rome. In 2023, he was appointed by Pope Francis to the important position of prefect of the dicastery for bishops, which involves the selection and confirmation of new bishops around the world. Many looked up to Robert Prevost as a prefect because of how carefully and thoroughly he carried out his responsibilities. He was meticulous rather than hurried, asked the right questions, and saw past outward signs of rank or status. Because of his position at the dicastery, he possessed a subtle but powerful impact. By choosing pastors who put their neighborhoods first, he shaped the Church's trajectory. Reflecting his own life, he stressed the significance of being truthful, humble, and spiritually resilient. His fellow Catholics in the Vatican saw him as an apolitical preacher who never wavered from his gospel message. By 2025, the Pope had stepped down. A lot of people were watching closely. A meeting of the cardinals was called to elect a new pope. Many people's names were mentioned, but Robert Prevost's name began to stand out as the voting progressed. He was revered, despite his lack of showmanship and lack of attention-seeking tendencies. He was someone who lived by his teachings, according to the cardinals. His years of service, strong faith, and compassion were all acknowledged. Following his election as pope, he chose to be known as Leo XIV, being the first pope to do so since Leo XIII in 1903. The decision was meaningful because it demonstrated his desire to continue the tradition of considerate leadership, blending tradition and modernity, and valuing individuals. He showed he would govern with wisdom, not greed, by going by the moniker Leo. Upon becoming Pope Leo XIV, he immediately began making history. Not only was he the first pope to hold Peruvian citizenship, but he was also the first pope to be born in North America, specifically the United States. Feeling quite proud. What a remarkable event. The first pope was born in Chicago, making him the first pope from America. He was the second pope to hail from the Americas, following Francis, and the first pope to come from the order of St. Augustine. His character and deeds were what truly distinguished him, yet these elements did help him win the election. Leo XIV prioritized the authority of bishops in his early years as pope. In addition to encouraging leaders to speak the truth, he said that churches should stay connected to their communities. Leo stressed that love, not control, should characterize a bishop's or priest's role. He emphasized that the church is international and not exclusive to any one country or group, and he called for more understanding and harmony among people of different backgrounds. His leadership style was uncomplicated. Big claims were not made by him. He exhibited courage, but in a composed way. His response was considerate and reflective. He was changed by his time spent serving as a missionary. Even to the Vatican, he maintained that same demeanor, voluntarily helpful, modest, and focused. Priorities for Pope Leo XIV were reviving spirituality, enhancing clergy training, and enhancing educational opportunities. He held the view that the Church should focus on strengthening itself first, before looking outward. Protecting the environment showing compassion to migrants, and fostering interfaith dialogue were all causes he supported. Nevertheless, he advocated for these without stirring up trouble or making people afraid. Because he thinks love is stronger than force, he always went for the delicate route. It didn't take long for his impact to grow. His actions garnered him admiration from people of many faiths and nationalities around the globe. He had little interest in leaving a lasting impression. He simply did not waver from his principles. He was viewed by many as a modest leader rather than a tyrant. Nevertheless, this was the domain of his authority. His reassuring voice was a welcome oasis of calm amidst the mayhem. The ascension to the papacy of Pope Leo XIV was an unusual one. Neither grandiose titles nor ostentatious speeches helped him rise through the ranks. On the contrary, he rose through the ranks by quietly leading, serving others, and being loyal. What was implied about him by this behavior? In what way did the Duchess of Wales respond? An action that conveyed more meaning than words alone. There was an eerie stillness in the Vatican Hall. Not even the rustling of papers could be heard. Standing before a silver basin, Pope Leo XIV was the center of attention, appearing composed and prepared for the unexpected. Something more important has happened, diverting the attention of the crowd from a missed handshake. Kate Middleton, whose real name is Catherine, Princess of Wales, was standing before him. Her poise, ability to deal with pressure, and refined public presence brought her fame on a global scale. She wore an impeccable outfit to every occasion, had a perfect grin, and never froze. But suddenly she was in a situation where there were no rules to follow. Not even the palace's prepared notes detailing what to expect, or consultants offering advice were there. This was more of a casual get-together. Something new and surprising was taking shape. Even though his voice was firm and determined, the Pope talked to her softly. Neither a casual photo op nor a friendly hello were his intentions, he said. What he really wanted to do was make a substantial contribution, steeped in a legacy that goes back hundreds of years. Out of nowhere, the mood in the room shifted from nervous anticipation to bewilderment. Since they were unprepared for this, Kate's normally well-prepared crew were perplexed. The journalists were shocked, as officials from the Vatican pushed in to find out what was happening. The journalists' utter shock caused them to let go of their pen, sending shock waves across the opulent marble hall. Meeting famous people typically made Kate feel confident, but this time she halted. The fact that she was wholly unprepared for this scenario was what held her back, not fear. Meeting the freshly elected Pope and personally extending a message of goodwill, she proceeded to Rome. But she quickly learned that the Pope had other plans. After that, he extended an invitation to take part in a ritual that predated their official roles. He stressed that the meeting was about modesty, not bragging, while the silver bowl glimmered subtly in the illumination. An electric buzz spread across the room. With his hands crossed over the water, the Pope stayed motionless. Her eyes darted to the bowl and then back to him. Her voice betrayed her astonishment at what was happening. The Pope agreed, saying calmly that the most meaningful things happen at the most unexpected times. Neither politics nor conventions were the center of attention anymore. Something sacred had been born out of it. He gently urged her to stand on the other side of the basin and explained that humility, not strength, is the key to leadership. It was the same hand that had greeted him earlier that he saw reaching out to him. Kate momentarily halted. Being calm and collected in the face of chaos was a skill she honed. Nevertheless, she had no say over this. Something out of her comfort zone was required of her. She had to give up and release her grip. She was tempted to run back to what was familiar, but the Pope's reassuring manner persuaded her to remain. Her acceptance of his invitation set off a chain reaction as she stepped forward, taking a deep breath. Everyone was gawking, and her advisors were taken aback. Still, she persisted in making her way to the Pope, present, directly confronting him. Her demeanor seemed composed, and she maintained a steady posture, yet the candor and authenticity in her gaze revealed an entirely new dimension. There was that one moment when she looked nothing like a princess or future queen. She came across as someone who was open to listening and engaging in a calm and sincere way instead. The room was filled with a gentle, melodious melody as the Pope took up a pottery pitcher and poured water into the basin. He spoke softly, bringing to mind the time when Jesus humbled himself by washing his disciples' feet out of love and compassion, rather than out of duty. Chasing silence, he submerged his hands in the pool. Quietness filled the room. After that, Kate delicately wiped the Pope's hands with a white towel. She was completely focused on the here and now, moving at a leisurely pace. The cameras captured more than just a superficial exchange. She wasn't trying to appear serious just then. Being authentically herself, she was subtly demonstrating a sacred form of kindness. The Pope retook the pitcher after she had done. At least he washed her hands this time, all while caring for children, entertaining large crowds, fulfilling royal duties, and captivating millions. These hands had accomplished so much. They were now being delicately cleansed. Kate was unmoved. She allowed the Pope to dry them. They both knew in that instant what the other was thinking, something unrelated to kings and queens and all things truly human. Everyone remained silent and unmoved. Everyone remained quiet and watched. Despite their inability to put it into words, they were aware that something major had happened. One of the Pope's aides was told by the Pope to let the press back in. After that, he addressed the media and told them they may ask questions if they wished. Although Kate's countenance was calm, her body language appeared more at ease as she gazed at her parched hands. Her poise and elegance remained intact, yet she exuded a fresh vitality. As she stood beside the Pope, she began to feel like more than simply an observer. An unspoken connection had formed between them. No one paused the recording. All around them, people were observing, attempting to make sense of what they were seeing. Nothing remained the same. No one could make sense of that right now, but they knew it was important to keep in mind. The Pope's refusal betrayed more than just words. It was accompanied by an unseen, deeper meaning. They had assembled, as is customary, a group of international journalists who were prepared with notepads, cameras, and microphones. On the other hand, this time around, the vibe was different. An odd stillness pervaded the room in place of the customary clamor and anticipation. No one spoke or reacted hastily. Instead of dread, it was perplexity. Nothing dramatic happened as expected. With everyone on the edge of their seats, they waited to discover if what they had witnessed was a battle or something deeper and more intimate. A French journalist questioned the Pope about whether or not he was rejecting the Congresswoman because he refused to shake her hand. In his response, the Pope clarified that the issue was not rejection, but rather purpose. He claimed that a lot of modern gestures are only for show, lack of loyalty. To minimize superficial contacts, he declined the handshake, not to make her feel embarrassed. There was silence after he spoke. However, they did manage to subtly shift public perception of the recent tragedy. His counterpart in Congress appeared lost in contemplation, her countenance betraying a more subdued and vulnerable demeanor. Going above and above the norm, something clearly struck a chord with her. A Reuters journalist wanted to know whether she had been hurt. In response, the Congresswoman expressed astonishment rather than offense. She had anticipated a strict regimen, but what transpired changed her perspective. Something about the whole thing made another reporter question whether it had been staged. The Pope almost grinned as he said that it would have been meaningless if it had been prearranged. That it was real was something he verified. Truly it was. It didn't surprise the Congresswoman. Instead, she exhibited empathy. She went on to say that being asked to think deeply is different from being caught off guard. Truthfulness is rare in politics, she conceded, and the Pope's message was difficult, but true. Closer and closer listening piqued the reporter's attention. There was a gradual easing of the Congresswoman's formidable presence. People were starting to regard the Pope for more than just a distant figure of history. On the other hand, someone from the rear of the room hinted that some believed the Pope had uncomfortably made the Congresswoman feel uneasy and was exploiting the occasion to demonstrate his authority rather than humility. In response, the Pope said that perhaps people lacked a complete understanding of humility if it was ever interpreted as domination. The press conference had the air of a timeless revelation rather than a routine news gathering. From the comfort of her stately Windsor residence, Princess Kate Middleton of Wales kept a careful eye on proceedings. She listened intently to every sound. This was more than just a religious or political tale. The message was to keep calm under pressure and to appreciate the little things in life. Kate understood this idea very well. Kate Middleton did not try to draw attention to herself by acting out. She exuded an air of tranquility that belied her status as a queen. Kate prioritized being there over putting on a show, much like the Pope who shuns pointless rituals. During royal occasions, she moved with grace and purpose, exuding warmth without being overbearing. She was not afraid. Rather, she displayed restraint out of reverence for a power higher than herself. During the awkward silence, Kate learned the value of paying close attention and being patient. She gracefully handled uncomfortable situations without getting defensive like other people would. She was self-assured because she never felt the need to prove herself to anybody. She was being completely genuine. It was an unwavering belief. One of the many journalists who peppered the Pope with questions wanted to know why he had selected water as the object of symbolic significance. Water connects, humbles, and purifies, the Pope said. Among the first signs of creation mentioned by him was water, according to religious writings. Furthermore, he doubted that individuals could lead from the same wellspring if they were unable to stand in solidarity at the basin. Kate, who had mastered the art of balancing modernity with tradition, had a firm grasp of the issue. Social expectations, familial obligations, and the duties of her position as a member of the royal family all exerted pressure on her sometimes, simultaneously. Like the Pope, She appreciated nuanced symbolism. Thus, she seldom changed her mind. Remembering that she hadn't anticipated feeling humbled that day, Kate glanced at her hands. Although she considered her grandfather's counsel, she admitted that she disagreed with certain of the church's teachings. True leadership is undermined when ego gets in the way of good judgment. While Kate might not have directly stated it, her actions conveyed the same meaning. Kate proved that true leadership is not about making a fuss by tending to hospital patients, avoiding controversy, and standing firm for her family. Being consistent and dependable is key. When asked whether she would do it again, the Congresswoman hesitated not once but twice. She went on to say that it wasn't easy, but that it was necessary since she thinks that only by challenging ourselves do we grow. The narrative shifted drastically once the Pope's agreement went viral on social media. In light of the many benefits that contemporary means of communication offer, this is not intended to be taken as an argument against the media in general. Now found themselves observing intently. Not only could they hear the words, but they could also feel the gravity of the situation. A BBC journalist was the first to speak out, approaching the Pope with questions regarding criticisms leveled by certain pundits. They thought his deeds may blur the lines between politics and religion, between genuine faith and performance, and between the two. The journalist wondered if this might establish an unwise standard. Pope Leo XIV responded with composure and assurance. He made it clear that having faith and helping others are not meant to be a performance. Into a situation where they might reawaken their sense of religion and learn the value of relationships. According to him, the latest event was more of a departure from elaborate spectacles than a union of church and state. Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood silently by his side, and the Pope turned to gaze at her. She transcended her role as a mere royal leader at that very time. Someone who had shown genuine bravery was she. Instead of giving in, her reaction was courageous. Right away, Kate did not feel compelled to say anything. She didn't come across as charming or defensive, but as composed and thoughtful. While she was doing her royal duties, this aspect of her nature was typically hidden. A thoughtful individual who took the time to listen before responding and who deliberated before expressing themselves. A second journalist followed up by asking Kate if she thought the whole thing was an attempt to undermine her authority. Kate reacted gently but firmly, saying that status and power were irrelevant. She resolved to give her undivided attention without striving for attention-grabbing performance, because it was an exercise in being present. A change occurred in the room's vibe. There was more going on than simply a press conference. At this turning point, personal convictions, religious tradition, and the fabric of society all interacted with and affected one another. Another journalist wanted to know if the Pope's moves represented an emotional, personal, and unorthodox new style of Vatican diplomacy. It had nothing to do with diplomacy, the Pope quickly retorted, but everything to do with being a disciple. The Church stood for sincerity rather than showiness. He made it clear that people were sick of fakery and superficial displays of affection. Princess Catherine's acceptance of the Pope's gesture was asked about by a South American journalist what it meant. The Pope took a quick look at Kate and said that it showed there was hope for change. Even people born into monarchy have the option to choose humility, he said. True faith, he said, cared nothing for rank or position. A person's willingness to humble themselves was the only thing that mattered. As soon as a few reporters set down their notebooks, it appeared as though they were not merely onlookers, but eyewitnesses to something deeper. Confidence and honesty were evident in Kate's speech. Having perfect character, she said, was her definition of strength when she was younger. But now she knows that vulnerability is a part of strength. She didn't act like a princess when she spoke to the crowd. She stressed the significance of distinguishing between superficial self-assurance and genuine faith, and between style and substance, recognized her ongoing development and her desire to continue studying. Pope Francis put his palm on his chest and made the comment that true leaders are not those who walk on water, but those who walk by their followers. This was clearly seen today, he said. Even though the throngs outside the building had subsided, they were still noticeable, shifted their attention from hearsay to seeking understanding. Respect, rather than enthusiasm or chaos, pervaded the news conference as it came to a close. The world was jolted by the quiet gathering. After leaving the hall, an aide escorted Pope Leo XIV and Kate Middleton. The Pope did not want to say goodbye, but instead pointed to the quiet hallway. They were the only ones present. No one else was using any recording equipment. After a short pause, Kate went on. After making their way down a winding corridor, they reached a private chapel. A solitary candle glowed beneath an unadorned wooden cross in the simple chamber. They were surrounded by nothing but quiet, not a single grain of gold or marble. Admitted she was unprepared for what was happening. No one is ever truly prepared, the Pope told her. She stood awkwardly behind him as he bowed low in the front pew. Kate admitted that she had thought she would be able to dictate every detail. Asking her gently what kind of control she wanted, the Pope probed further. Kate thought long and hard as she sat next to him. For a long time, she had been preaching the gospel of leadership, social transformation, and amplifying the voiceless. But looking at the cross made her realize that she had been so preoccupied with controlling the outside world that she had failed to give herself permission to change on the inside. With a subtle smile, the Pope suggested that perhaps today was the beginning of a fresh chapter in her life. Out of nowhere, there was a soft tap on the door, but the Pope paid it no mind. He proceeded to reveal a tiny rosary made of olive wood from his sleeve, detailing how it had been bestowed upon him by a Palestinian widow who had tragically lost 3 sons in a conflict. The only thing this poor woman had left was her faith, which she freely gave to those around her. Pope Francis presented Kate with a rosary, telling her it was more than a present. It will serve as a constant reminder of her enduring faith. Kathleen clutched the rosary, admitting that she was ill-equipped to pray. She had been doing it already, the Pope told her. A mixture of uneasiness and awe at the bond they shared caused Kate to gently laugh. By refusing to flee the unexpected scenario, Kate shocked the Pope. She chose to step into it instead. After declining her handshake, the Pope wondered why she remained. Rather than a rejection, Kate interpreted it as a challenge, as she said. Her response was recognized by the Pope, who assured her that she had not failed. Speculation and conversation surrounded the events that transpired outside the chapel. There were 2 leaders inside, and they sat silently without any pomp and circumstance. They were only 2 people attempting to grasp the essence of modesty. The vibe in the room shifted as they stepped out. Because they sensed something extraordinary had happened, the reporters spoke more gently. The Pope and the Duchess strolled hand in hand, unaccompanied by anyone else, just being peacefully there. A news reporter wanted to know if they could comment. Words would not be enough, Kate responded, after hesitating and looking at the Pope. Everyone in the crowd fell silent. After shaking hands with everyone, the Pope unexpectedly extended his hand to Kate. His hand was shook by Kate. In awe rather than disapproval, the audience erupted in cheers. Rather than asserting authority or celebrating victory, the handshake conveyed gratitude and respect. A cardinal made the comment within the apostolic palace that something like this had never happened before. With a smile on his face, the Pope made the statement that neither of those things had ever happened. What, however, is the common ground between these two leaders? What impact do you anticipate it will have on their bond? A modest and kind leader, Pope Leo XIV, formerly known as Robert Francis Prevost, is now admired all across the world, thanks to the unseen hand of Princess Catherine. To get people's attention, he doesn't use force or shout. His calm, modest, and friendly personality, on the other hand, is what draws people in. His message can be conveyed without raising his voice. His gentle, calm, and moral nature is immediately apparent just by being in his company. As head of the Catholic Church, Pope Leo XIV is remembered for his uncommon blend of humility and discernment. His selection as Pope in 2025 surprised some. It wasn't for want of credentials. He had a stellar reputation for his work with Peruvian bishops and missionaries. It was more that he avoided the limelight and preferred to remain in the background. He showed that quiet leadership may have a big impact by confidently taking on his new duties despite his fear of public scrutiny. Leo XIV thinks leaders should know their people inside and out, and he places a premium on listening to others. Instead of taking charge, he collaborates closely with priests, bishops, and ordinary Catholics. Although he values tradition, he also stresses the need of mercy and reaching out to the Church's downtrodden members. In his function, Leo XIV is meticulous and considerate, never making hasty judgments. He is adamant about standing by his ideals. Responsibility and honesty are two things that matter to him. He is of the belief that pastors and other church leaders should set an example by being accountable in all they do. His goal is to restore faith, particularly in places where it has waned among religious leaders. He avoids making dramatic announcements that are accompanied by dazzling promises. Slow but steady improvement, he thinks, is more permanent, so he works quietly and methodically instead. Politically, Leo XIV is more comfortable remaining on the sidelines and treating everyone with dignity and respect. He believes the Church ought to stay out of politics and instead advocate for universal values like fairness, nonviolence, and respect for human dignity. His words on the need of assisting those in need, working hard, and preserving the environment are gentle but full of conviction. Leo XIV isn't here to pick sides or win arguments. He is devoted to bringing people together and healing their wounds. Without making a fuss, he shows his regard for monarchies, particularly the British monarchy. The symbolic importance of the long-standing customs is something he greatly appreciates. Although he doesn't talk much about the royal family, it's clear that he thinks the monarchy is important to world history and culture. He stays out of people's way and tries to build bridges instead of walls. One can't help but draw parallels between this approach and that of the Princess of Wales, Catherine. One is the head of the Catholic Church, and the other is a member of the British royal family. Their jobs couldn't be more different, yet they are. When you look more closely, you'll see a certain shared grace that makes you feel strong and at ease. Both people are known for being very calm and collected. They aren't the type to seek attention outright, but they can certainly make themselves noticed when called upon. Words are carefully considered by them, and they speak only when absolutely required. Yet when they do, they hold everyone's attention. Their strength comes from carrying themselves with dignity rather than from resorting to force. Like Pope Leo XIV, Princess Catherine is esteemed for her devotion. She has, through her years of modest service, gained the confidence of those around her. She prefers to remain out of the spotlight and avoids controversy. Role, family, and charity work are Princess Catherine's top priorities. Pope Leo XIV is similar to her in that he does not desire admiration or acclaim. They share a commitment to doing well, being honest, and caring about others. But the kind of work they do distinguishes them greatly. Public appearances, fashion, and living up to royal expectations are all part of Catherine's life. She is a symbol of modern monarchy and beauty. Contrarily, the key themes of Leo XIV are leadership in the Church across the world, prayer, and doctrine. In spite of their distinct functions, they both gracefully fulfill their responsibilities and infuse their surroundings with a sense of tranquility. Numerous people hold the impression that Pope Leo XIV is trustworthy, humble, and profoundly spiritual. His unassuming and devoted lifestyle brings solace and optimism, rather than shock and surprise. Pope Leo XIV is renowned for his quiet and modest leadership, yet he has encountered difficulties during his tenure as Pope, as is common for public figures, particularly those responsible for a vast population. He may have avoided scandal on a personal level, but the church he leads is facing serious challenges that call for his discernment, consistency, and patience. When dealing with situations of violence, the Catholic Church has encountered some resistance. In the wake of changes instituted by other popes, Leo XIV is placing an emphasis on openness and responsibility. It has been made quite plain by Pope Francis that he does not want anyone to be excluded because of their lifestyle choices. Regardless, a number of survivor organizations are concerned about the lack of action and his track record with cases, particularly from his previous posts. Because of this, he has a hard time striking a balance between being careful and satisfying the faithful's demands for justice. The selection of leaders is one area that Pope Leo XIV has been focusing on. In his efforts to heal divisions in the Church, Francis has been choosing cardinals and bishops with a compassionate and inviting demeanor. We're hoping for a shift like that, but more broadly, we want to be a place where everyone feels comfortable and accepted. His welcoming personality has unsettled certain conservative factions, despite his adherence to traditional church doctrines. Instead of sowing discord, he hopes to foster harmony and dialogue. Being the first pope to be born in the United States to also hold Peruvian citizenship has given him unique insights on global affairs. Despite initial skepticism about his familiarity with church politics in Europe, he has since earned respect for his unwavering faith and sound judgment. This demonstrates that diverse backgrounds may produce effective leaders. Pope Leo XIV addresses pressing global issues, including migration, global warming, and peace campaigns. He doesn't advocate for any one political party, but rather offers advice and principles. This has garnered both admiration and disapproval from those seeking more precise assertions. Even in the Vatican, people have seen that he liked to think things through and make judgments slowly. While this method may occasionally lead to delays, he is of the belief that better and more long-lasting benefits are achieved when one listens attentively before acting. Pope Leo XIV maintains his composure, strength, and convictions in the face of adversity. To unite people and encourage healing in a complex world, he leads with a gentle strength that is both powerful and serene. Do you have any thoughts on Pope Leo's reply? In your opinion, does this behavior reflect good on him? In addition to liking, sharing, and subscribing, feel free to comment below with your ideas. Before you leave, please play the video that is currently playing.